Good evening, America, and thank you very much for joining us tonight for what I think you will find a very, very informative and interesting program. At a time when our nation is seeing an obscene level of income and wealth inequality, and when I think, as all of you know, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while at the same time working people are struggling. We are going in the next few weeks and months to be focusing on the needs and struggles of working people. And we are going to take a hard look at the increased level of unionization activities that we're now seeing all across this country in an unprecedented way. Workers, coast to coast, are beginning to stand up, fight back, and demand to be represented by a union. And tonight, something which is really, really exciting, we are going to be speaking to workers in Buffalo, New York, who are attempting to unionize 3 Starbucks shops in the Buffalo area. Now, you might say, why is an effort to organize 3 shops a big deal? And the answer is that Starbucks has some 15,000 locations, some of them corporately owned, some of them franchise owned, but 15,000 in the United States, and none of them, 0, are unionized, not one. So if these Starbucks workers succeed in their organizing effort, it will be a major breakthrough, not only for Starbucks employees, but for all workers in the low-wage service industry as a whole. This is an industry where people are paid some of the lowest wages in America, worst working conditions. If there could be a breakthrough here at Starbucks, it is a very big deal. And I should add here, and you'll hear a whole lot more about it tonight from our guests, that Starbucks management, to say the least, has been less than enthusiastic about this union organizing effort in Buffalo. In fact, they are doing everything, really in some incredible ways, everything they possibly can to defeat this union organizing drive. Now, let me say a word about the Starbucks Corporation. And the key point to be made here is that Starbucks is not a poor company. This is not some company that is struggling, trying to put a few dimes together. Quite the contrary. This year, Starbucks has already made over $4.1 billion in profits, 4.1 billion in profits. Last year, Starbucks had enough money to pay its CEO, Kevin Johnson, $14.7 million in total compensation. That's over 1,200 times what they pay their average employee. And I think this is also an interesting point to be made, that during the pandemic, the founder of Starbucks and the major stockholder in Starbucks, Howard Schultz, became $1.9 billion richer. That is just during the pandemic, and now has a net worth of almost $5 billion. In other words, Starbucks is a company that has the resources to provide its workers with good wages, with good working conditions, and good benefits. And now let me just divert for another moment and raise another issue that I find very, very interesting. And that is that many, not all to be sure, but many of Starbucks employees are younger people who come from a generation that has really struggled economically. And if you are a member of that younger generation, you know what I'm talking about. In America today, our younger generation, through no fault of their own, now has a lower standard of living than their parents. In other words, the American dream is going backwards. Our younger people are poorer than their parents were at the same age. Our younger generation receive lower real inflation accounted for wages. They have higher debt, most often student debt, and the amount of money they spend on housing is very, very high. So you add all of that stuff together, not a lot of money coming in and a lot of money going out. They are struggling in a very significant way. In America today, the average worker is making $40 a week less than he or she did 48 years ago after adjusting for inflation. According to the most recent data, millennials earn about 20% less today than baby boomers did at the same stage in their life, despite this generation being better educated. The bottom 60% of college graduates earn less money today than those who graduated college did 20 years ago. The wealth of the average millennial today is 40% less than those who were at a similar age in 1989. Meanwhile, the cost of housing in real inflation accounted for dollars is 72% higher than it was 20 years ago. Cost of college education is 163% higher than it was 20 years ago. The cost of childcare and preschool is 100% higher than it was 20 years ago. So you got a lot of pressure on this younger generation. And of course, the pandemic that we continue to go through, struggle through, has made a bad situation worse for all of us, but maybe even more so, the younger generation. And during the height of the pandemic, 54% of young Americans either lost a job or had to take a pay cut more than any other age group. 52% of young Americans were forced to move back home with their parents. They couldn't afford their own housing. 35% of young Americans experienced problems finding enough money to pay the rent, medical care, or other bills. So this is where we are right now. We have a company that is doing phenomenally well. We have workers who are struggling to put food on the table to pay off their student debt. And in Buffalo, New York, workers there are standing up and demanding a union. And tonight we're going to hear from some of these workers, and we are going to find out what motivates them and what they want. So let us begin with Michelle Eisen. And Michelle has been a Starbucks, what they call partner. I would call it an employee, but within Starbucks lingo, it is a partner for the last 11 years, and is also a production stage manager. Michelle works at the Elmwood location and is a leader of the Starbucks Workers United Organizing Committee. Michelle, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders, for allowing us this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our campaign and what brought us to this point. Like you just said, I've been a partner for 11 years, a very loyal partner. Starbucks does use the term partner. I think initially they started using that because we all have some stock in the company, and so that makes us partners in the company. Unfortunately, that term has also been used by upper level corporate as almost a manipulative way of saying we're all at the same level, we're all partners. We definitely know that not to be true. There's a very clear distinction between the hourly wage partner and salaried upper level management. But it is nonetheless a company that I came to because they were a company that professed to be one of the better ones, somebody that you would want to work for, someone who cared about their employees and the community and the environment. And I'm in the arts. That's my career. That's what I went to school for. And I'm unfortunately in the arts in the United States of America, where health benefits don't always come along with that. So as an adult, a responsible adult, I decided I needed a second job that could give me those benefits. And that's where Starbucks came into play. And 10 years ago, when I started, they really were the company that they professed to be. At least I viewed them that way. And in the last few years, this predates the pandemic. The pandemic was certainly a catalyst for the sliding and the working conditions, but the last few years, things have changed. There's been a very clear shift in how they value their employees. And I definitely have felt that undervalued. We have seen, since we went public with this campaign on August 23rd, we have seen just something that I didn't really expect. It's very contrary to the company that Starbucks says that they are, at least to the public. We've seen our stores inundated with corporate from all over the country, as far up the ladder as the president of Starbucks North America, Rossann Williams. They've sent what they call support partners into our stores to attempt to prevent us from talking about the union with our coworkers. They're called support managers. This is the company's term, not our term. We know that they're there, unfortunately, to surveil us and to prevent us from doing the work that we'd like to do. And what I'd like to see happen when we do unionize is I'd like to be a voice for my coworkers. I'd like to have a seat at the table and a voice in the company that allows us to have a say in our working conditions, a say in our pay. I mean, someone hired tomorrow is going to make 63 cents less an hour than I make after 11 years with the company, and that's unacceptable.
Michelle, stay on that point for a second. You've been with the company now 11 years?
Correct.
If somebody walks in the door and gets hired tomorrow, you will be making 63 cents an hour more than that person?
That is correct, yes.
So it sounds like over the last 11 years, you have not been getting terribly many wage increases of significance, huh?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that and a combination of, fortunately, the minimum, the minimum going up, their hiring wage going up, and I don't begrudge anybody that. I mean, I think everyone should have a living wage, and you should start at a wage that is livable. You shouldn't have to work your way up to that. So I don't begrudge the people coming in who are making nearly what I'm making. What I don't understand is that it's clear that senior partners, senior employees are not valued to a degree that we should be, given the amount of time and energy we've put into this company.
Michelle, and we'll talk about this more later, but what percentage of the employees in your area are part-time? How many are full-time?
I'd say there's maybe about a 50-50 split. There are definitely a lot of students. There's a lot of people like me who have a secondary career, and we came to the company because one of the perks is that you only have to work a minimum of 20 hours a week in order to qualify for benefits. Unfortunately, the quality of those benefits has also started to decline significantly in the last few years. It's been a very clear shift between, valuing your employee. I keep saying a very clear shift from partners to profits, because it really feels like that, it's a churn and burn kind of career now, where you get someone in and you use them up, and then when they leave, you replace them with somebody else, and there's really no desire to try and nurture that relationship.
That's an important point. We'll return to that in a minute. Our next guest is Gianna Reeve. Gianna is a shift supervisor at the Camp Road Starbucks and a student at the University of Buffalo. At a recent anti-union meeting, Gianna asked former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz to sign fair election principles for union elections. Gianna, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity as well, Senator Sanders. It's so great to be here tonight.
Should we
When
make it a little
I
louder?
first started at Starbucks and when I punched into work every day, it felt like a second home. After the union drive began, there's been such a shift in that. Now we have strangers that are portrayed as support managers, flown in from around the country, Arizona, California, Boston, you name it, that are around every corner. So before, when I was able to have genuine conversations with my peers and my friends and my partners, I now have partners that are coming in saying, no, we're just like you. But instead, I also listen to you, demean you, degrade you, and reprimand you for the smallest action that has to do with the union drive. To talk about the anti-union meeting with Howard Schultz, I stood up and I asked him to sign a set of fair election principles that said that Starbucks would hold themselves to a higher moral standard than what the law has. Because more often than not, the law isn't always the best for our protections, especially as workers in organizing. Starbucks has been able to get away with heinous actions during our union drive. At the meeting, when I stood up and asked Howard Schultz to sign, he ran away. And instead of at least having a conversation and being able to speak with him, no partner was able to ask him a question there. They told me to sit back down. They used their bodies to push me towards the middle of this little circle they set up for him to speak originally. And they just kept telling me, sit down, this isn't the place, this isn't the time. And I have to ask myself, while I fight for this union, while I fight for my partners, when is the time? If I, a partner, and Howard Schultz, who is apparently also a partner, are supposed to be on equal playing fields, then you need to actually uphold your morals. And if Starbucks will not do that, we have to do that. My fellow partners and I have to do that. That's why I'm fighting for this union so hard with everything I have. Partners need to have the same platform and the same volume of voice as anyone above us. District manager, CEO, ex-CEO. We need our voice heard.
Gianna, let me ask you this. First of all, congratulations on your courage.
Thank you.
Not so easy to stand up to the billionaire former CEO, and you did it. In your view, what motivates your coworkers to want a union? What are some of the factors that say, you know what, the status quo isn't working, we need a voice at the table, we need to improve working conditions? What are some of the things that employees want to change?
Employees want a seat at the table. Every so often, and especially recently, we keep hearing this phrase of Starbucks saying, oh, at every chairman meeting, there is an empty chair that represents partners in our company and represents customers. And I have to ask myself, and lots of my fellow partners, my fellow coworkers ask themselves this too, and that's, why isn't that seat filled? You have over 8,000 stores in the United States, and you will not fill that seat with an actual worker, someone that is actually making the drinks and is on the floor. It's kind of laughable to brag about that.
All right, but let me ask you, if you were on that seat, you were sitting there, and you were representing tens and tens of thousands of Starbucks employees, what are some of the concerns that you'd raise?
Like Michelle said, one of the first things, seniority pay. I have a partner that's been at the company for 17 years. She's in the same position as me. I'm a shift supervisor, so is she. But almost 2 decades of experience, and she makes a little over $1 more than me.
Wow.
That is unacceptable.
Why do you think that's so? That sounds a little bit weird. Why is there so little pay differential for somebody who has been there for so many years and a newcomer?
More often than not, I tend to think that perhaps they want the turnover to be high in their company, just so that even though they have these benefits to display and to give out and to show the public, they don't have to actually fess up and give those benefits to people. I have so many of my coworkers that say, it's great that we have these benefits and all, but I'm unable to access them because I don't work enough hours. I'm still eligible for federal benefits through my time at Starbucks.
Well, somebody told me, and I'm throwing questions at you, which you may not know the answer to. You work at a shop, you're not aware of what goes on all over the company. But I'm told that a number of employees, rather than taking the healthcare benefits that Starbucks provides, end up on Medicaid. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. I know multiple people at my store that are on Medicaid rather than using the Starbucks benefits.
Okay, this raises a whole bunch of other issues about why the federal government has to be subsidizing an enormously profitable corporation, but it also speaks to the fact that many of these great benefits are not able, or it's not useful for workers to utilize them. Okay, Gianna, thank you very much. And let's go to Maya Panos. Maya is a high school student and at the age of 17 is the youngest member of the Starbucks Workers United Organizing Committee. Maya will transfer to a Starbucks in California in the fall of 2022, when she will start at UCLA as an engineering student and a Division I student athlete in crew. All right, Maya, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Senator Sanders, for having me today. When I first started, I started quite recently back in late July. Like nights before, I'd be like in my bed, like almost shaking, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go work tomorrow. I'd like wake up in the morning, early, hop on my bike, take that 20-minute bike ride to work, walk in, see all my amazing coworkers that I love dearly, and would go on the floor, make lattes for people, make their morning. And I truly loved that. That's why I initially started working at Starbucks after hearing about the great work environment. But as the months have gone by, and like after we announced our union campaign, after and once corporate started coming in and have been planning like different outside of store managers into our stores, and have been walking in during our shifts and whatnot, it has totally killed the morale over at my home location on Elmwood. And it has created a strong divide, not only between our manager, which we all love dearly, our managers, and us, but also with our baristas that we work right next to on the floor, because you have different opinions coming up, whether it's from what Starbucks has told us during the meetings and that's what our baristas are believing and whatnot, or it's people who truly love the union who are trying to fight against this power that has been coming in and trying to wreck our campaign. It has really taken a strong toll, not only on our work environment, but also on our mental health and whatnot, as we've been pulled outside of our availability and hours into these different meetings from corporate that have been slowly, at first it was a larger group of people, but then as they started slowly narrowing it down and making it smaller and smaller, it's been really stress inducing. It's been hard to, wake up in the morning and, go to work and still be able to give that same happiness that I used to the different customers that walk in. And not only with that, on top of that, people, like, as they've been hiring a bunch of people to dilute our votes, our hours have been slowly getting cut down week by week. I try to aim for at least 20 hours a week to help pay for different things in my life. And recently my hours have been getting cut down to on average by 5 or 6. In order to get those hours back, now I have to go to my manager and be like, can you please schedule me on the floor? Like, I need 8 hours on this day, or else, I just can't, it just won't be a good week for me. And not only with this, as a customer, walking into the store, like I go to Starbucks every morning before school, I have to, walk in, look around to see if anybody from corporate's there before I'm able to place my order, or else, I feel like I'm being put in a position to be almost interrogated when I'm just trying to, start my day and get to school in the morning. And it's been very, very tough, not only for me, but for my friends to see, like when we're just trying to, get a pink drink or whatever, just to see me beelining out the door, just because I see someone from corporate there that I don't want to see at that time.
Is that an increasingly common occurrence to see people from corporate in the shop?
Absolutely, yeah. It's made me recently. I had to take a break from my home store in Elmwood, and I've been picking up different hours, whether it's at UB or at Dollar Chippewa or anywhere I can go, just get away from the environment, since that's one of their prime locations to go to. So just trying to like dodge them has been very, very stressed. It's been very, very hard on me.
So from what you're saying, I'm hearing that these corporate types are putting a lot of pressure on workers to vote against the union. Is that the case?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you give us some examples of how that works?
Well, this has recently ended, but every week they would have meetings, and they would pick out different people from the store to come at the store at different times to sit down with about 5 or 6 people, whether it's the DM, the president, or just a whole bunch of different people from different Starbucks, Starbucks positions, to come sit down, talk to us, and they would literally explicitly say, "We want you to vote no." And it's like it stemmed from then, and they'd like go on for like about an hour or two talking about why we shouldn't do it, how it's going to ruin our work environment, how it's going to ruin our partner experience. And it's been really hard to make these meetings and stuff when it's like it's a real gray zone between whether it's mandatory or not. It's almost like peer pressuring you to go, and like if you don't go, then you're not a partner. That's what I get from those meetings.
Okay, Maya, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got to tell you, when I was 17, I wasn't thinking about the things that you're thinking about. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Lexi Rizzo, who has worked at Starbucks for 6 years and is a shift supervisor and organizing committee leader at the Cheektowaga, hope I pronounced that right, Cheektowaga store. Lexi led her store to file for a union election with 100% support, the highest margin of any store. Lexi, thanks a lot for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction and for giving me time to speak. Also, for the record, you did pronounce it right. That was really good. Most people have a much harder time. So I've been with Starbucks since I was 17 years old. So for all of my adult life, almost.
Now you're 86, right?
Yep, you got it. At least that's how my back feels.
How many years have you been there?
Sorry,
how many years have you been there? 6 years, is that?
Yep, 6 years, and I've been in Buffalo for about 4 years now. I've been with the company this long because I truly do love this company. For a very long time, this was a company that upheld the moral standards that it claimed to have to the public. I felt proud to be with this company. They have given me the opportunity to get my bachelor's degree. They have given me health insurance. They've connected me with some of the most beautiful humans I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. The partners that I've come to work with are some of the closest people to me in my life, and some of the most talented, strong, courageous people I've ever met. And I will always be grateful to Starbucks for those things. But in the past few years, as Michelle was saying, there's been a very steady decline. I've watched partners struggle to work enough hours to maintain eligibility for those benefits that the company loves to tout as being so wonderful. But if you cannot get a consistent schedule that allows you to work enough hours to keep those benefits, then they're useless. I've seen the price of our health insurance go up and coverage go down every single year. I've seen partners be denied maternity leave because they just were not getting scheduled enough hours to be eligible. At the same time, our store is so understaffed that we can barely function. This is pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, and everything in between. That's been an issue since I started with the company. And I think a pervasive issue is the idea that a food service job like this is a temporary job or a throwaway job. But I go to work every day and do what I do because I have a passion for it. And I believe that it should be a sustainable career. I don't agree that if we are unhappy with the way Starbucks is, that we should just leave. I believe that when you love something, you fight to make it better. And that's what we're trying to do with our union campaign, to give ourselves a voice and give ourselves the power to hold Starbucks accountable, to make the changes that we know need to be made to improve our company. We've given years and years of blood, sweat, and tears, and we haven't been appreciated. The issues with seniority pay and staffing are not new. And Starbucks claims to have progressive values and to be this morally upstanding company. When we first came out with our union campaign, I truly did believe in my heart that they would sign the fair election principles, that they would recognize our campaign, but instead we've been met with all these vicious anti-union tactics that my partners tonight have told you about. At my store, as you said, we had 100% majority, and they flooded our store with corporate partners. And they really took from us what is most powerful about the Starbucks experience, which is the love and the passion that we have for one another, to where my baristas were totally isolated on the floor with 10 members of corporate, all just telling them why they should vote no. And I truly did not believe that my company would be capable of such a blatantly illegal and horrible campaign that they've released here in Buffalo. And it really does break my heart to see what they've stooped to try to stop us when we really do want what's best for this company. We really do love it. And even at my store, we had our voting list doubled with partners who do not even work at our location, who just picked up shifts for about a week. And so now they're all on our voting list. So this election has not been a fair election, and we are definitely going to need support in getting Starbucks to come to sit at the negotiating table with us and help us negotiate a fair contract.
Okay. Well, Lexi, thank you very much. There are millions and millions of people, including myself. We have a very nice Starbucks in Burlington, Vermont. I travel around the country. I drop into Starbucks very often. I like the coffee. Tell us a little bit, about what it is to work. What do you do? I mean, what is the nature of the job at Starbucks?
That's a really great question, because a lot of what we hear is that a lot of people wonder why we wanted to have a union at a job that they see as unskilled labor. But I can tell you that we are not unskilled laborers. The Starbucks partners that I work with are incredibly talented. We do not just pour coffee. We invest a serious amount of emotional labor into our stores for our partners, for our customers, for our communities. We don't just make coffee. We maintain equipment. We deal with people at their worst and at their best. We make a difference in people's lives. I have countless stories throughout the years of beautiful interactions I've had with customers, along with the bad ones. People do not come to Starbucks because of Kevin Johnson or because of any of those things that Starbucks portrays in the media. They come to Starbucks because of their team of baristas that they know and love. That connection that we develop in our communities is definitely the most powerful aspect of our jobs.
Do you have in your stores a regular clientele of folks who come in every day? Or
absolutely, we do. Yeah. And all the stores I've worked at have all had a very regular clientele.
All right, who else wants to jump in on that issue? Many of us go in to get our cup of coffee. We don't know what it's like on the other side of the counter. What is that like? Who wants to?
I can weigh in. So the Elmwood store is kind of unique in that it is a location that is one of the very few just cafe locations left in this area. There's no drive-through attached to it. It's in a place called the Elmwood Village, which is just outside of the metropolitan area of Buffalo, and it's a neighborhood cafe. I mean, I've been at that location about 6.5 years, and I've known 75% of that clientele for 6.5 years. I've seen their children grow up. They have, they come in and celebrate milestones. They celebrate our milestones. I mean, some of them know as much about my personal life as I know about theirs. If I've got a show that's about to open, they're coming in to tell me break a leg. They're coming to see my show. So I'm making their latte in the morning, and then I'm seeing them at the theater in the evening. So, I mean, this is a community. And it really is what Starbucks is good at. They're good at bringing people together. And so in that vein, we're asking them to continue with that mission, to uphold that mission. I mean, there's nothing more together than, workers organizing for a better working environment and a better life. So the fact that they've been so against our movement and so against this, when it follows right along with their mission. So
would you agree, Michelle, would you agree with Lexi that there's a sense of disappointment that a company that portrayed itself as progressive has suddenly become so vicious in its anti-union activity?
Absolutely. Yes, it's incredibly disheartening. I'm right there with Lexi. We both came to this company for very much the same reasons. It was supposed to be a different kind of company. And they still are trying, they want to maintain that image. I mean, I see the commercials, they pop up probably because there's so much Starbucks talk going around in my life. But, every day I log into Facebook or Instagram, and the first thing that comes up is a Starbucks ad, and all of their ads express the same thing: people coming together to make their world a better place to be in. So I'm not really understanding the level of hypocrisy that seems to be coming along with this anti-union campaign that they're waging against us.
Gianna, did you want to jump on that?
Yes, just because I remember distinctly when we had our first organizing committee meeting to begin this whole process, one of the things that came up a lot was the sense of, we all came in wearing rose-colored glasses when we applied because we saw the picture of Starbucks that Starbucks wanted us to see about their missions, their values, their sustainability, their benefits, their camaraderie with each other. And I think maybe perhaps to the detriment of Starbucks now for the 100 or so corporate spies in Buffalo, we have now banded together and we have stuck by each other because we realize that if we want to make this vision work, we have to be the ones to do it. And we have to stand together, despite the message being that we are taking away from the company by doing this, that we are introducing a third party, even though this whole time, all we have said is that this is partners coming together as partners. We are expressing our partnership together, and we are using it to have a collective voice so we can make Starbucks the company that they say they want to be.
Okay, Maya, do you want to add anything to that?
I just want to say that, just like bouncing off of what Michelle was saying, like, yes, we do more than just pouring coffee. We steam the milk to the right temperature. We frothed it the right way or aerate it. We make all the different, we make the mocha, we make the vanilla foam, we make it all like from scratch. We clean the bathrooms after somebody totally wrecks it. I don't even know how, but we go in, we clean up that. We sweep everything, mop, we take care of the store. And I just think that with all we do, at the end of an 8-hour shift, my feet are in total pain. I just hope that with inflation and all that we can at least get paid that is equivalent to the inflation that's going on right now. So I'm not walking into work one day and then the next week when I get my paycheck, that money is worth less than what I initially worked for it was.
Okay, thank you. We got a bunch of questions here that viewers have asked us through social media. And let me start off with a question that came from Audrey. And Audrey writes, as a fellow Starbucks partner, what tips do you have for unionizing? I'm trying to get my store to do it as well. All right, so she wants to know how you guys did what you do. Who wants to answer that one?
First and foremost, I want to tell that person, reach out to us via our email. We have it posted on all of our social medias. We can give you more personalized advice for your situation and your store. It's hard to make a larger blanket statement because there's so many specificities that go into organizing, but please do reach out to us directly and we'd be more than happy to connect you with someone who can give you.
Are you guys hearing from workers around the country at Starbucks?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit, who wants to talk about that one a little bit?
I can weigh in on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't take very long. I think within the first sort of national attention that we got, which was pretty early on I think right around the time we filed our petitions, there was already some sort of chatter going on social media. The second that we went public, all of our social media launched as well. And what Starbucks has been very successful in doing, and I will continue to give them all the credit for this, is building a network of partners that spans the entire globe. So the connections that we make in these stores, these are forever connections for a lot of people. So we've got friends that, I met working at a store in Hawaii 10 years ago that I'm still friends with. And those people are interested in this. These problems that the company has come into Buffalo and said, these problems are specific to Buffalo. None of these problems exist anywhere else in the company. It's just this particular market that happens to be broken. And that's their talking point, because if that isn't their talking point, then they're going to have to figure out how to address these issues across the country. And that's what we're hearing from. We're hearing from partners across the country who realize they know these problems exist everywhere. And they're sort of looking to us to lead the way. And we are more than willing to do that for them. We did have a store recently file a petition for unionization in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona. And that was a pretty unique sort of situation. store manager was a whistleblower who contacted us to let us know about all of the anti-union things that corporate was asking upper management to do. And because of that, she was fired from the company for wanting to sort of let us know what was about to happen to us. She was a beloved store manager, and the firing of her was the catalyst to get that store on board. And they contacted us and wanted to file a petition for unionization immediately upon her termination. And they're in the middle of that fight right now. So we're offering them as much support as we possibly can from Buffalo. And we are willing to do that for anybody else who wants to jump on board.
Any other people hearing from folks around the country?
I'd like to talk a little bit just because it really made my night about a week ago. It wasn't too far away from Buffalo, but a town about a 40-minute drive outside of Buffalo. I won't out them for obvious reasons. But they came into our store, and usually when someone comes in and they want to talk about the union and they're a customer, someone, pro partner usually runs in the back and they're like, Gianna, they want to talk about the union, and they have to be real quiet about it to avoid God knows how many support managers that are around. So I walk up to the front and I cash them out and take their order, and they go, yeah, I'm from so-and-so, and I heard a lot about Buffalo here. And it's just so great that you guys are doing it. I hope that my store can do that too. And to the partner that asked the question originally, and to that partner once again, if they're out here watching this ever, you have power within yourself to do things that you could not imagine you could do originally. If you would have told me that I would be here talking to you, Senator Sanders, with some of the most amazing people I've ever met, fighting for the rights of all of my fellow workers, I'd tell you were crazy. But here we are, standing together, and it's working. And we are making it work. So don't be discouraged and keep fighting.
Thank you, Gianna. All right, we got another question. I think it's a very good question from Betta, Bedda. And Betta writes, what is the best way for the public to show support for the workers in their unionizing efforts? So you got, I don't know how many, probably millions of people every week are walking into Starbucks, and many of them I think would like to know how they can be supportive.
Definitely. For customers that are local in Buffalo, please come in to one of our stores that's petitioning or voting and wish us well. It means the world. Something that's been really powerful that some customers have been utilizing is changing their names on their mobile app to say like union yes or vote yes, or just generally show messages of support. And for some of the baristas that have been demoralized by the months of this egregious anti-union campaign, they're all so exhausted and so tired. And just to hear from their customers, we support you, you're doing the right thing, and we're proud of you, it's extremely powerful, at least for the customers that are local. And as far as nationwide, we aren't asking for a boycott yet. At this point, we're asking for the public to put pressure on the company to come to the bargaining table with us and negotiate a contract with us peacefully and recognize our union once we win. We are very confident that by the end of next week, we're going to have the first union Starbucks in the country. And our fight is going to be getting corporate to come and sit at the table with us and bargain. So the public putting pressure on them to achieve that goal is really what we need right now.
Great. Anybody want to add anything to that? Okay. Kind of a related question is Dylan writes, I am a partner with Starbucks. How can we help? How did you start organizing? How can we start unions in our area? See, it's
so beautiful.
Yeah, I
becoming
would
contagious, you know. Other people are going to want to emulate what you're doing.
absolutely.
All right, what do you think?
I would echo what Lexi had said. It's going to be certainly an individual basis. Every store is going to kind of have a different situation. So reaching out to us separately is definitely the best way to start. We are more than happy to share every bit of knowledge we've gained throughout this process. I think it's really.
Michelle, let me ask you this. Share it with us now. How did it start? Were you one of the? Did somebody wake up one day and say, "Hey, I want to form a union"? How did that work?
I'm going to defer to Lexi for this one because she really was at the very, very roots of this. And I think she can lend some better insight than me.
Okay,
So there's been like some talks of unionizing among Starbucks partners since the day I started in 2015, but it was always a pipe dream because as hourly employees of Starbucks with such high turnover, we always felt disposable. And I had been talking to Richard Benzinger, like our organizer, on and off for years, and it just never came to fruition in a meaningful sense. But with the pandemic, with the labor shortages, and with the perfect storm that we experienced back in, I'd say like July and the beginning of August is when we really started just grassroots organizing. So we did a very good job of keeping it secret. I was approached by another one of our committee members, Jazz, and we sort of very quietly spread the seeds among the stores to set up for our first meeting before we came public. And corporate didn't actually find out until about 24 hours before we went public. So if there was one piece of really big advice in an overarching way I could give is just shh, because we still do work for a company that is not fond of unions, not fond of union organizers, unfortunately. So please do reach out to us and we will help you. We are busy, but we have time to help our partners. That's what this is all about, is partners standing together to do something that the company could not do for us.
just out of curiosity, do
Yeah.
any of you have friends or relatives who were active in the union movement? Or
I have an aunt who's a flight attendant with Southwest, has been for many, many decades, and she's been in the flight attendants union. But other than that, no, not personally.
anybody else?
My father and my grandfather were both members of CSEA. So there was that union background. My maternal grandfather also came from Harlan County, Kentucky, and a long line of coal miners. So there's definitely some labor movement blood in my family. So I think I'm carrying that with me throughout this fight.
My dad's a Ford worker. I mean,
Is what?
my dad's he works at a Ford plant in Buffalo.
Okay.
So he's a union member. We wouldn't have our house. I wouldn't have half the opportunities that I've had without him being represented by a union.
So you have, Maya, do you have any, your family have any union background?
No, on one side I'm first generation, on the other it's just they're all like construction workers and whatnot. They haven't really spoke to me about union stuff at all.
Well, you all know that you're part of a very, very proud tradition. And as Gianna mentioned, not just her family, but millions of families in this country have a middle-class standard of living precisely because of the trade union movement and the struggle for decent wages and healthcare and pensions and so forth. So you are part of an enormously important historical movement. All right, we got a question from an interesting question. And that is, you guys are out there every day interacting with the public, right? In the midst of a pandemic. And the question that Layla asks is, how has COVID impacted your ability to do your job safely? Right? You're in the middle of a terrible pandemic. This virus is terribly contagious. You're going to work every day, you're interacting with people. Some of them are vaccinated, some are not vaccinated. So what's all of that about? How does that impact your job?
I'll gladly weigh in on that, at least to start. And then I'm sure all of us, this is certainly a subject that all of us will have something to say on. The catalyst for where we are right now, sitting here talking to you about forming a union, was most definitely the COVID pandemic. We were being put in a position where we were forced essentially to work and take our safety into our hands and risk contracting this deadly virus, potentially bringing it home to our loved ones. And we had little to no support from Starbucks, corporate, or upper management. I mean, it was truthfully, I think back to those early days, pre-vaccine, when there wasn't even really kind of one on the horizon yet. And we were just being asked to work face to face with customers, with, hand sanitizer and disinfectant spray and a timer that went off every 30 minutes that said it was time for us to go wash our hands. And that was essentially it. We weren't granted any additional labor to help sanitize these cafes. Starbucks has the ability to go completely paperless and cashless. That's what the mobile app was developed for. They could have chosen to go that route to try and limit our contact with customers, passing things back and forth, and they chose not to. I'm sure that it goes right back to profit margins and the fact that some people don't have smartphones or don't want smartphones or think that the app is stealing their information. I'm not entirely sure, but what it comes down to is the company could have made some really good choices that would have at least mitigated our risk, and they chose profits over that. And it was.
Did any of the employees, the partners, get pay bonuses or anything?
At the very beginning of the pandemic, we were granted an additional couple dollars an hour. They called it hazard pay. It lasted approximately 4 weeks. So somehow by beginning of June of 2020, they had deemed that it was no longer hazardous to work under these conditions, and therefore we didn't warrant any additional pay. So yeah, it's been scary. I mean, we've got partners, I think Lexi touched on this, who were working in the middle of a pandemic, and I've got fellow partners who are scared. It's taking a toll on their mental health, and yet they still may not make enough money to put groceries in their fridge and pay their rent in the same month. And yet we've got a company that's making record-breaking profits in spite of all of this. They capitalized on the fact that Starbucks represented a certain level of normalcy, and they knew that, you know, the customer would come out, even if the world was upside down, they could still come and get their caramel macchiato. And as soon as they realized they could turn a profit in those circumstances, they did. And that was a little bit sickening. That's when I reached the realization that either things needed to change or I needed to find a different place to work. And thankfully, the opportunity presented itself shortly after to organize. And that's why I'm doing this.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, please.
I just wanted to point out again the juxtaposition of Starbucks's messaging and Starbucks's actions. At this Howard Schultz event, he also discussed the crisis of capitalism and how horrible it was that we had to go through this pandemic, and how he said thank you and everything. And like you said, he raked in $1.9 billion during the pandemic. And he was talking to a group of working class baristas about how horrible it was that we had to go through this, when he and every other member of the upper chain of command could have chosen to make it easier on our baristas, to make it livable, and to avoid the stress that came with the challenges of the pandemic. But they chose not to. Instead, they chose virtue signaling. And that is, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, I love Starbucks and I want them to be what they say they are. But there are certain actions where they will always kind of mar my image of the company.
Anybody want to add something about working at Starbucks during the pandemic?
I guess I'd like to say, like, as a supervisor, one of the most longstanding issues that I've had in trying to succeed in my job is just the amount of labor that I'm given to work with, how many partners the company allots to be on the floor to work. During the pandemic, we were expected to send a partner out into the lobby every 15 minutes to sanitize all the surfaces that could be touched. We were expected to cover everyone's position on the floor so that they could wash their hands every 30 minutes while maintaining the same level of productivity, the same level of drive-through times. They did not give me any extra bodies whatsoever on the floor to accomplish these extra tasks. So I have on my shoulders making sure that not only all my customers stay safe and healthy and aren't putting themselves at risk of contracting this virus when they come into the store, but I have to somehow protect all of my baristas from this virus while I cannot enforce my customers to wear masks. And while they're taking down the guards between us and the customers and putting up more guards between us as partners, between our espresso machines, it's just so much emotional labor. And that's what I keep turning back to in my time with Starbucks, is the amount of unpaid emotional labor that we perform especially as supervisors, but for baristas as well, to put that onus on me to make sure that my whole team is safe for my shift, but they can't invest in us enough to give me just one extra body on the floor. They can't spend that extra $100 or however much we actually get paid after how much our health insurance costs and these other benefits to ensure that I can safely provide this experience for my team and for my customers coming in. I've never felt more powerless. And my store I got COVID during the pandemic from working at Starbucks. Multiple people I worked with got COVID. Even during this anti-union campaign, when they're flooding my store, they have 16 people working behind the bar of my location. We're crammed in like crazy when we should only have 6. And that's all just a show of force, an intimidation tactic to frighten the 2 baristas that are there from my location to not vote yes, completely throwing up in the air that we're still in a global pandemic. And multiple of my partners had to isolate for up to 2 weeks because they got COVID during that time.
Right?
Yeah. During that time, they were flooding my store with dozens of support managers, people from corporate, strangers. Multiple partners from my team got COVID. I got COVID. I'd say about half the partners who worked at my store got COVID during the pandemic. And
Anybody else want to add anything?
I got COVID.
Yeah, go ahead.
As well.
You got COVID as well?
Yes, I switched from a different food service location, thinking that Starbucks would be a better place to work with and shift. And it was really weird, changing my employment, my place of work during a pandemic. But I was like, Starbucks is going to do what they say. They're going to protect, our workers and everything. But the protections they did offer weren't enough. They did not prove effective because, boy, when I tell you it was the oddest illness of my life, and I'm lucky to not have had terrible effects because of it. My mom has an autoimmune disease. I live with my grandmother. She's 86. She's like, those are the people that I'm trying to protect. I'm not worried if I get COVID. I'm worried if the people I love get COVID and what will happen to them. But the protections and the resources given to me were not enough to do that.
All right, we are running out of time. Does anybody have anything else they would like to discuss that we haven't gone over? Anything on your minds?
I think we really need to note, Senator Sanders, that we wouldn't be in the position that we're in currently if there were labor laws that protected the workers the way they're supposed to protect the workers. Starbucks would not have been able to wage this anti-union campaign had there been, the PRO Act passed or anything even remotely like that would allow for protections. I mean, to have laws that are put in place to protect a certain class of people and actually have those laws in a lot of ways work against that group of people, you might as well just not have those laws. So we really need to know, we would already have our union. We'd already be done if the laws didn't have so many loopholes that allowed them to essentially come in and dominate us in every sense of the word, and just continue to delay and harass. That's been very hard to understand as a layman coming in and really having to take a crash course in labor law and just kind of realize that we have very few protections, and that's just not right.
Now, that is an excellent point, Michelle. And it's an issue in a variety of ways that we are working on. And I think it was Lexi who made the point a while back that even if, as I hope you will be, even if you are successful, your struggle is not over, because you're going to have to get them to sit down and negotiate a first contract. And based on everything that I've heard tonight, they will resist that in every which way. They got lawyers that stall it out and hopefully discourage people from going forward. So the fight is not over, but your point is absolutely right. The truth of the matter is there are millions of workers today who want to join a union, but the laws that we have and the opposition from companies makes it very, very difficult for them to do that. And it is my very strong view that if a worker wants to join a union, it is his or her constitutional right to be able to do so. We've got to change the law to make that reality. So it's an issue we're working on big time. All right, anything else on people's minds?
I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and to give us your support and for all the work that you're doing to pass the PRO Act. So what's happened to us does not keep happening to workers in the future. That will be very powerful when we can win that battle. But your support means a lot, especially considering we're going to need it to get them to the table. And that goes to the public as well.
You've got it. And let me just say, on a personal note, that you're an inspiration to me. It makes me, especially after a day at the United States Senate, it is a pleasure to see folks stand up and fight for what's right, for justice, for workers' rights. So thank you very much for what you're doing, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night, Senator.